Hi there, this is Andrew from Kwood Publishing, and I've got a review today of our book Monsters of Feyland, the first book in our monster series. Now, all the art in this book, including the cover, is all by the same artist, Travis Hansen, and I'll do a page-by-page review. So in total, there are 100 creatures, 100 new monsters for a Fey or forest setting. Most are Fey, but not all of them. So here we have the table of contents, and then a general overview of Feyland with some lore about the area and the unpredictable nature of it. We introduced the idea of the Seelie Court and UnSeelie Court, which is from folklore. And there's advice here from game masters about how to run the campaigns in the setting. There's also a graphic we have, a full chart that shows members of the Seelie Court and UnSeelie Court, the good and evil courts. In general, the good and evil courts. And then there are also wild Fae. Here's a picture of the Mountain Lord, the King of the Giants, who's also in the book. The first creature going A to Z is the Arcane Stalker, a Fey creature that can give magic users, spellcasters, a very challenging time. Then we have the Basilisk, the giant Basilisk, which is more like the true Basilisk in folklore, as opposed to the one in the core rules. Then we have a Boggart, again from folklore, another famous Fey creature. In the corner, we have an insert, Flora of Feyland, and we have a number of these throughout the book, which tell you about different kinds of fungi and plants that you could find in Feyland and their special effects. The next creature is the Brownie, a chaotic good Fey. And then two different types of centaurs. We have the armored centaur on the left and the centaur mage on the right, both of which are part of the good Seelie Court. And then a changeling, which is the offspring of doppelgangers and humans, another Fey. And the first of a few undead, the Doom Rider, which is the combination of a spectral elk and its rider, a very powerful undead creature, CR10. And then one of the favorites, the Doubt Trout, who sowed doubts amongst adventurers. And then one of the many dragons, the Dream Dragon. And the Dream Dragon's breath weapon actually creates a hallucinatory terrain, which its opponents have to fight their way out of to defeat the dragon. The next two dragons, who both have magic, are the Purple Dragon and the Storm Dragon, both very powerful, CR21 and CR23. And then two more dragons, the legendary Jabberwock on the left there from a very famous folktale. And on the right, a smaller dragon, still large size, but more of a mount for creatures and usually for humanoids like goblins. It's called a Quadrak because of the four wings. Here we have the Dryad Queen, a very powerful dryad, and one of the most powerful creatures in the book, the Elder Tree, and one of the only neutral, actually both of these creatures are neutral, and the Elder Tree is featured on the cover as well. Then we have two elves who are part of the Fey community, two elf types, the Fey Knight on the left and the Fey Noble on the right, both fairly strong. The Fey Knight is the same CR as the regular Knight, and the Fey Noble is actually CR8. It has spell casting as well. Then we have the Fae Ranger, another elf creature, and all the elves, all the good elves are part of the Seelie Court. And we have Everflower. Now these are followers of one of the Archfey, and they are chaotic neutral. And they have a lot of special abilities, including fighting and the ability to summon a swarm of bees. Now we have four types of fairies, each who is part of a different court, two for the Seelie Court, two for UnSeelie, one for each season. So we have the Autumn Fairy there on the left, and the Spring Fairy, the Summer Fairy, and then here on the right, the Winter Fairy. Next up is a Fey Caterpillar, strange creature that smokes an interesting pipe with some creative uses, as well as an interesting character as far as role playing. And then the Fey Touch. So these are people, humanoids who get lost in Feyland. Next is the Frog Witch, an evil, chaotic evil creature who lives in the swampy part of Feyland and has an interesting minion we'll meet later in the book. And then another one of the Arc Fays, the Frost Lord on the right, who's part of the UnSeelie Court. And then we have some giants, the Mist Giant, who actually has magical powers. And then the Mountain Lord, who I mentioned earlier, who is the king of the giants, the CR18 giant. Then the Rock Giant is the last of the giants. Chaotic evil, CR9, very powerful. And then the Lake Gnome, a tiny, we go from a giant creature to this tiny Fey, and he's got some interesting abilities. Then we have the Goblin King to your left, who is a goblin who's seen an interesting version of the king and decided to dress up like this Goblin King. And another goblin, the Goblin Shaman. And then a winged goblin, which is kind of a larger version of the goblins. And a gremlin here on your right, a tiny Fey. Then we have the Forest Hag, a different type of hag with a very powerful staff of decomposition. And then the Harvest Maiden, so one of the UnSeelie Court's members, part of the Autumn Court, and she serves one of the Arc Fae. Now we have the Haters, the ugliest of all humanoids. I'm sure people might have met these before. And then we also have some inserts that are called Features of Feyland. So in this case, it talks about winds that actually change time. Next, we have the Hatter, who has the ability to throw hats with very special abilities as part of their attack. So one of them, for example, can make people fall asleep once it's thrown and lands on their head. Another one can land on the target's head and then be charmed by the Hatter. Then we have the legendary Headless Horseman and a Huntor. Now these evil centaur types make up the bulk of the UnSeelie Court's army, about their shock troops. And then to the left, we have the Ice Princess, one of the Arc Fays. Another one of the evil ones who had one of her abilities is a frozen song. To the right is the Lady of the Swans. Now she's part of the UnSeelie Court, and she's also known as the Lady of the Lake, another Arc Fae. So next comes the Log Shadow, another strange Fae who lives in the woods. And on the right, one of the lycanthropes. So we have the Weir Badger, who's neutral evil. We have the Weir Fox next, who's chaotic neutral. And then we have the Weir Rabbit, who is obsessed with time and is constantly rushing about, has an hourglass attached to him. And this is as I said, the Weir Rabbit. Next is the first member of the Wild Hunt, the Master of the Hunt. And then we have the Mist Phantom, a very powerful undead creature, CR10. We have the Nighthound, a very dangerous, chaotic, evil, fake creature that is known to kidnap children or steal treasure. And on the right, something very different, the Nymph, the chaotic, neutral, wild, fey creature. Next comes the Oak Lord, one of the most powerful Arc Fae, who serves in the Seelie Court. And then the king of the Seelie Court, King Oberon, goes by many names, but that's one of them. And here we have a couple of ogres. So the Ogre King, who uses a door as a shield, and the Ogre Mage, quite a powerful ogre that has spellcasting abilities. Next is Orchid. She's another Arc Fae, She's in the Seelie Court, but is very tempted to join the UnSeelie Court, and she's actually chaotic neutral. Next is the Pond of Reflection, an evil fey creature that will teach vain creatures a lesson. Next, we have the Prince of the Pipes, another one of the wild fae, and he's a leader of the satyrs. Next, another Archfey in the UnSeelie Court, the Prince of Twilight, basically an illusionist. Next comes the Protea, this plant creature that can swallow humanoids. And the leader next of the UnSeelie Court, the evil Queen of Darkness, also has many names, also known as the Queen of Magic and Murder, the Queen of Bats. She has spellcasting, CR 25, very powerful. Next is the Rain Man, an evil fake creature that strikes in the rain. And the Rhododendron, a plant that will send out a sound blast, a sonic blast to cripple people and humanoids. Next is Riverwind, another Archfey. He's currently in the UnSeelie Court, but he's actually not quite sure that he belongs there and is interested in moving to the opponent's side. Next, we have the Royal Stag, one of my favorites. He's an ally of the Seelie Court, a very powerful, huge size Fey stag type creature with magical abilities. Next is the Rune Tree, one of the many undead that can shoot branches out to attack people and appears as a normal tree. So it's a really surprise encounter. Next is the Sandman, a very famous fey creature from folklore. Then we have the Shadow Bird, an evil bird which acts as a spy many times for the UnSeelie Court. And we have shadowy trees, which are evil trees, huge size, CR 12, extremely powerful. Next is the Siren. Now, sirens, this is the true form in Fae in folklore about this Fae. So they're part bird, part female humanoid, evil, CR 4. They have a song that can lure creatures similar to the harpy and other abilities. Here we have a skeletal spider, which is ridden by other undead creatures. And we have the Skeleton King. Now, this is actually a Fey creature, an Archfey, who's part of the UnSeelie Court, and he has magical powers. And then on the right, the Skeleton Warrior, which is a massive evil undead skeleton that uses a greatsword. Next up, another Archfey, the Snow Queen, who's part of the UnSeelie Court and the Winter Court. And then we have a good tiny creature here, the Sprite Knight. Next comes a mysterious creature known as the Storyteller. Now, if you read our other books, Monsters of the Underworld or Monsters of the City, you can learn more about the Story Weaver. Next is the Swan Maiden. And then we have the Sylph and the Thresholder. Now, Thresholders are guardians, sentinels that lurk near gates and entrances into Feyland. And they can be of any alignment. So sometimes they'll be evil or good. Next is Queen Titania, also known by many other names. In the world of Mir, she's known by Nox. Now, this is a very powerful Archfey, CR 23, many magical powers, and the companion of King Oberon, the partner of King Oberon. Next is the Toadman, who's the henchman of the Frog Witch, who we discussed earlier, and he is a handful. And we have the Tree of Dread, which is an evil fey creature. We have many evil plant and tree creatures in the book. Next is the River Troll. Now, this is a really nasty troll, CR 9, It can drown. It's really high armor class. It's a real challenge, even for a high level party. Next are one of the many unicorns. So we have the black unicorn on the left, chaotic evil. We have a chaotic neutral unicorn, the green unicorn on the right. And then the demonic abyssal unicorn, the red unicorn. So on the right is another member of the wild hunt. So there's the master of the hunt, there's the wild horses, the wild hounds on the next page, and the wild riders opposite. All these creatures are part of the wild hunt. Next are the witch and the witch king. So for some reason, many books in the game have not included the witch monster. So we've included one which has to be evil or good and is susceptible to water and has some of the traditional features of witches over time. On the right is the Witch King, a very powerful Archfey who's part of the UnSeelie Court, CR 21. He has magical powers and a +3 greatsword. And he's wearing magical plate armor, just to top it off. Next is the beast section. So we have the Forget Frog on the left. We have the giant butterfly, which could be a very useful mount on the right. More mounts here, the giant dragonfly on the left and the giant fox. And then we have the giant rabbit and the giant swan, another possible mount. And over here we have the giant tortoise, which could be the ultimate pack animal. And on the right, the Jabberwock, which is basically a war dog, an armored mastiff, if you like, often used by goblins. And then one of our final images is the frog witch in her home, in her lair, the swamp with her giant frogs. Then we give you all the monsters by challenge rating and type. And as you can see, all this table here and here is all the Fey creatures, so the majority are Fey. Then we have an encounters table, which includes the monsters from this book. Some more art. And then we have the back cover, again by Travis Hansen. And it says here, just around the corner, beyond the stone gate, through the mirror, lies Feyland. So that is 100 new creatures for 5th edition or other RPGs by Kaywood Publishing.